and class fellows. Today our topic is about deforestation, pollution and climate change as threat to forest ecosystem. So there are many threats to forest ecosystem, but the climate change, pollution and deforestation are most eminent threat to forest ecosystem. We will discuss these threats in detail. The climate change is sometimes called the controller of the other threats because it has several impacts on other threats. I would like to throw light on climate change in detail. So let's talk about climate. What is climate? The climate refers to the average atmospheric condition for a long time period, about 30 years of a region. And in the definition of climate, we mention that the average atmospheric condition. So, what are atmospheric condition? The atmospheric condition are temperature, humidity, precipitation, airflow, barometric pressure, composition, and toxic condition, etc. So these are also known as the components of climate. The elements of climates are factor of climate. Taking the average of these factor make the climate of a region. Now come to climate change. What is climate change? So it is the long-term change in average pattern of climate. Now, if climate change, the constituent or the factor of climates also change, like precipitation, humidity, airflow, etc. They are also change. The change in climate is due to the greenhouse effect and global warming. I hope you may know about the greenhouse gases. The artificial increase in the greenhouse gases cause the artificial increase in the greenhouse effects, which cause the global warming, and due to this global warming the climate change globally. This change in global climate damage the forest ecosystem in different ways. Before I will discuss how the climate change has threat to forest ecosystem, I would like to discuss the factor of threats from which we determine the extent of damage of a threat. So the extent of damage of a threat is determined from three factors, and these factors are intensity, frequency, and time period. Let's talk about intensity. What is intensity? Intensity refers to how much the threat is intense. So if the intensity of a threat is high, it will damage the forest ecosystem to a greater extent. Take the example of rainfall and hail. So if there is heavy rainfall and hail, it will damage the forest ecosystem to a greater extent. You can also take the example of forest fire. So if the intensity of forest fire is greater, it will damage the forest ecosystem to a greater extent. Now, frequency. Frequency refers to the number of events in a specific time. For example, forest fire events per month or per year. So frequency of a threat is determined by dividing the number of events on time factor. Intense threat with high frequency will magnify the extent of destruction. Now the time period. Time period means the duration of time of a threat. So intense threat with a high time period will distract more forest area. So these are the factor from which we determine the extent of damage But the main point over here is that these three factors are shifting due to global climate change, anthropogenic activities. Now, here shifting means they are changing. So it's mean that the intensity, frequency, and time period can be increased or decreased due to global climate change and humankind activities. Now let's know how these factors are shifting and how these factors are changing and increasing and decreasing. Take the example of frost. So, do you know about the frost? So, it is a component of climate. It is a thin layer formed on the surface of soil or leaves of plants. So, the increase in the intensity and time period of frost greatly affect both the vegetation, trees, and nurseries, and especially young plants are more affected. Nowadays, Acacia and Bombax adversely affected in Pakistan. And this is due to the climate change. Due to the climate change, the intensity and frequency of frost is changing. Let's talk about drought. So drought is actually the lack of water in a specific area for a specific time period, or it is the decrease in availability of water in a specific area, or it is the shortage of water in a specific area. As we know that water is essential elements for forest, the increase in water availability reduces the growth of forest. Nowadays, scrub forest and forest in the plains are more prone to drought damage. I would like to talk about other factor of climate that can damage the forest ecosystem. Temperature. Increase in temperature can affect the forest ecosystem both directly and indirectly. So the high temperature can kill plants. The effect is more on young plants because at high temperature the stomata become closed and plants start wilting. The high temperature in combination with the wind provides suitable condition for getting forest fire. The reason is that the forest fire is set up due to friction between leaves and wind, and a high temperature intensify the chance. It's provide the suitable condition for getting forest fire. Think of these factors that we studied earlier and relation with each other. They increase the frequency and intensity of each other. For example, the temperature and wind increase the chances of getting fire. A temperature and precipitation increase the chances of landslide and erosion, which is also an issue related to the forest ecosystem, and it is also a threat to forest ecosystem. Now, precipitation and wind increase the intensity of wind through, which is also a threat to forest ecosystem. Hurricane, ice storm, wind through can damage the plant in the same way as wind through. The climate change is also concerned with snowmelt, and due to snowmelt the climatic zone are shifting. So in this way the plants migrate or die. There is adaptation. So if there is adaptation the plants will survive. If there is no adaptation the plants will die or migrate. Now let's talk about what is situation here in Pakistan. So Pakistan is semi-arid climate. The country also facing the climate change impacts. The Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, said in the UN Assembly that we are combating the issue of climate change, but it is not the duty of a single country. We all should work together to handle this problem. Nowadays, another devastating threat to forest ecosystem is the deforestation. Not only Pakistan is facing this problem, but overall world is facing this problem. Deforestation refers to the removal of trees and vegetation in an unsustainable manner. Many developing and underdeveloping countries affects the forest ecosystem, and Pakistan is a developing country, so its forest ecosystem is facing serious threat in this way. Today the main causes that can be associated with the deforestation are overpopulation, urbanization, and so on. We are observing that the population of the world is increasing day by day. In the same way, the population of Pakistan is increasing. The greater the population, more is cutting down of trees. The people the people cut down tree for combustion purposes. They are cutting down trees for timber and making furnitures. Another problem of related with the deforestation is urbanization. So what is urbanization? Urbanization is the expansion of cities. The people move from villages towards the cities, and they require infrastructure and they require residencies. So in this way the forests have threat to be cut down to make houses. The good transport system required land, so making roads and highways, government cut down the forest ecosystem and remove the trees. This is another cause of deforestation. Although the tourism sectors have positive role in economic development, but lack of knowledge in some people can damage the forest ecosystem. And nowadays the Pakistan is facing the problem of energy crisis. So to handle this problem and this crisis, new dams are constructed, and the dam project can damage the forest ecosystem. Due to increase in population, our agricultural land decreased with the passage of time. So to cope this problem, forests are cut down to making agricultural land. Now this is a mangrove forest, and this is a mangrove forest around the Indus Delta. Actually, the Indus mangrove forests are amongst the biggest mangrove forests found in the world, and these forests are found in Sindh and Balochistan, and since these forests are found in along coast, the forests in Sindh are under the Sindh Forest Institute and Fort Qasim Authority. In Balochistan, these forests are found in Kalmathur, Melanihur, and Gawadar Bay. Now this is another beautiful spectacle of mangrove forest. In Pakistan, the forest ecosystem are damaged usually for making room and urban development and infrastructure, animal fodder and food and wood. Now this is news, and this news shows that the deforestation as main threat to Pakistan forest ecosystem, and the rapid cutting down has impacts on climate, and the government is not interested in taking measure. Now, Ministry of Climate Change released a framework policy report. According to this report, Pakistan, the country which have least area covered with a forest in the world. Now, pollution is another threat to forest ecosystem, especially mangrove forest. There are different types of compounds which damage the root of plants. The flowing of hot water into the sea and rivers damage the riverine forest and mangrove forest, and excessive use of pesticide fertilizer is harmful to forest. In the same way, chemical waste, oil, and toxic substance damage the forest ecosystem to a greater extent. These pollutants are carried by river system and then damage the mangrove forest. Thank you very much.